Aquaba. Negada. Hodi. Colloquium. Marajo. Abu Sheni. I greet you in many tongues of the African people. Hello and welcome. This morning, I want to speak to you about the spirit of Africa, the Africana Renaissance. The ancestors have set off a beacon in our spirits, and the children of Africa are listening to the voice of the ancestors. We had questions posed this morning about that new African and how he will come into being, how he will come. Well, I first suggest to the African, in our boldness, in our greatness, is to go back to the gods of your ancestors. Because it is within the identity of the gods of your ancestors that you, African, have your power. You ask the question, or you feel embarrassed to talk about the Obeah. But the Jewish have no problem talking about their God, the God of Abraham. The Indian has no problem talking about Ra, their God. The Chinese have no problem talking about Buddha. The Arabs have no problem talking about Allah. But when you get to the African and you talk about the old-time ways, you're made to feel embarrassed. You're made to feel ashamed of the gods of your ancestors. Now, I was born and raised in the belly of the beast, the United States of America. But yet, the voice of my ancestors speaks through me to tell you. Let's open up our ears. Let's open up our eyes. Let us not be ashamed because other nations colonized us and told us that what we knew was bad. What's the difference between me and you that's born on the continent or born throughout the diaspora? The difference is the land in which we're born. But what is our connection? What is our connecting point? Our connecting point is the ancestors. The spirit of unity is alive. The spirit to rejoin those of the diaspora, be it from Brazil, be it from Haiti, be it from any of the Caribbean islands, to be rejoined to those on the continent. Now, we've heard myths about each other, but we must forget what other people tell us, and we must remember what our mothers and our fathers have told us about who we are and what we are. It's important in the African Renaissance to understand identity, to understand from which your power flows. Now I'll give you an example of what your Christianity and what your Islam and other faiths do for you. Consider a cup of coffee. You use sugar to sweeten it. For those who are diet conscious, they may use sweet and low or other additives. And if you put those additives in the coffee, it's going to give you the desired effect of sweetness. But the bottom line, if it's not sugar or honey or molasses, it's artificial. And that's what the Christianity and Islam has given to Africa. An artificial system of worship. You pray to these gods and they steal your lands. You pray to these gods and they take the wealth out of Africa. They put pictures for the world to see of the bloated bellies and the flies in your eyes. But yet, when you look at that African soil, you stand upon the gold diamonds, the coltan, the diamonds, gold, sulfur, bauxite. Africa is not poor.
That's right. That's the key.
Africa is the richest continent in the world in terms of natural resources, in terms of animals, birds, species of insects. Africa has more than any other continent. And I tell you, I stand in the belly of the beast. They come to Africa and create their wealth. If they can come to Africa and become wealthy upon the ground on which you stand, then it is time for Africa to repackage itself, to rebrand itself, and take itself back and possess the wealth that the gods of your ancestors created in your own land.
That's right.
I am an African. These words were first spoken at Columbia University in 1906 by Mr. Pixley Costelli. And he delivered a speech entitled The Regeneration of Africa. Years later, former president of South Africa, Thabo Mbeki, also utilized these 4 words: I am an African. In the United States, right now there's a movement to no longer refer to the children of the diaspora, those that ancestors were enslaved on that soil, as African Americans, but to come and stand in unity with those of the continent, and we declare ourselves to be African. I am an African. Over the past, I would say 6 months, there has been a rise in the spirit. There have been groups forming, taking on various names and titles of I am African, and it's with the youth. The youth are hearing the voice of the ancestors to come together for purposes of education, to regain the glory that Africa once had, to put it back into its place. The youth are listening, and we, the elders, must also listen and support. If we send our children abroad to get that education, do that. But also, come back home. If you love the hospitals in Europe, if you love the hospitals in the U.S., train your children in those hospitals and bring them home and build the hospitals where you stand. That is your power.
That's right.
Take back your natural resources.
That's right.
Renegotiate the contracts.
That's right.
Where a European power come in and dig up all your gold and you get 10% of the proceeds.
Really?
Let's rethink this.
That's right.
You get 10%, we get 90% because it's on my soil. And if you do not like the contract, Africans, let's continue to raise this army because we aren't talking about war.
Yes.
But let us fight for what belongs to ours.
That's right.
Let us fight for what belongs to us.
That's right.
Today, in the Africana Renaissance, and I know I have totally deviated from my paper,
It's all
but
right.
today it feels good
That's right.
to be an African. And I want to leave you with these last words. Teswe Hamwe, all of us together, Kwaheri Yakubu Ona. Goodbye until we meet again. Today, it feels very good to be an African.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Diop, and thank you for keeping to the time. So next, we're going to hear from Ms.